Thank you for coming. This is our final community engagement event for the proposed redevelopment of the St. Bernard Square. The CIC and the community have found a true partner, and I believe it will continue to work with us on our vision for that area of Vine Street. So just kind of as a point of reference here, this has become a valuable working relationship and friendship that we feel will provide us with an exciting outcome. And again, the CIC will continue to keep the community updated as the project advances. So just because this is the final community engagement portion does not mean that this is the end for the community getting further information. But this has been your opportunity to have input. This has been your opportunity for the development team to update you as this progresses through based on your input. So tonight we'll go ahead and turn this over to Steve Kennett, who will kind of guide us through the process again.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out again. I see a lot of familiar faces from our previous two sessions, which is awesome. We can go through a little bit of history so that we're setting the table for anybody either live or on Zoom who has not seen this before. But we will try to be brief with that part because we know everybody's very anxious about what this last session is presenting. This last session, though, I will reiterate what the mayor just said. This is still the beginning of the process. This might be the end of the community engagement sessions, and this is about the visioning for what the project will be, but we have really yet to begin the schematic design process. So we'll be going through some of that again. So tonight we'll be going through the introductions and overview are not much, but we'll hit again the design principles and the project goals, the takeaways from the last session that we spent together, and we have some revised site concepts that came out of your all's feedback. So we're excited to share that with you. And then some precedents, and then we'll talk about what the next steps look like. You know Darren and Civitas, and Brian is with Regnum Capital. We got to meet him last time, ourselves, and some of the work that GVBN has done. So our next steps, we're still working in this due diligence phase. So this is about testing and validating the program overall. It's not about getting into the nitty-gritty details of the project, but this sets up this due diligence period that begins now, and hopefully the intent would be to be able to close on the property with the CIC and with Civitas over the course of the balance of the calendar year. So all the things that are happening. So we did our session one, which was the strengths. We had a great working session with you all and talked about what are the best things about St. Bernard that we really want to be able to celebrate, and where are the areas that we can continue to work and continue to make the village even stronger. We shared some precedents and some ideas, concepts. We went over 4 concepts when we were together in August, and now we've taken that and we've refined them. So this is our conceptual design presentation. So when we talk about what the design principles are that we wanted to work with, right? We wanted to make sure that at the end of this project, not right now, not in September of 2021, but 3 years from now, when we're looking through those goggles, those 3-year goggles or 2.5-year goggles, that we have really created a sense of place for St. Bernard that gives you a catalyst to continue to do more with. We want to make sure that our business district is stronger. That includes all the businesses that are here currently, that their needs are served, and we're encouraging more businesses to come into the community. We're trying to make sure that we build on some of the streetscape improvements that the village has already done, and that we've got a very pedestrian-oriented experience all the way up Vine Street. So that kind of teeters away. What's happened in the business district so far kind of stops at the southern gateway of our site. We want to make sure that that gets all the way so that coming north or coming south from the underpass is as inviting to St. Bernard as it is coming through the main part of the business district. And we want to diversify the housing offerings, right? So St. Bernard has a great base of single family homes. You don't have a lot of multifamily apartment opportunities. So when we talk about rebuilding the housing ladder, we want to make sure that we have some new product apartments of varying sizes so that people who are working their way into the market or people who are working their way down to a simpler lifestyle all have a home within this development. And that's why some of the product that we're talking about, small units, larger units, townhome units, they all have a place in this strategy. So we've talked a lot about these buzzwords that we talk about, and they're not meant to be buzzwords. But when we talk about public realm, these are the kind of spaces and the kind of experiences that we want to create with you. How we activate the streets, sometimes that happens in commercial retail, like outdoor dining and things like that, but it happens just as importantly with townhomes and stoops and places that people gather and people say hello to their neighbors. Housing offerings I just spoke of a little bit. So we've got an opportunity here where we can create some small flats, simple one-story apartment units, some larger ones so that, again, we have a robust offering for people who are in different places of their lives relative to a single person who is just coming out of college, or somebody who has a family, or somebody who is on the empty nester trajectory. And then we also have the townhomes, and townhomes are really nice for larger families because we can get maybe 3 bedrooms in these. And we haven't really cooked what the townhomes are specifically in the massing models. You'll see that we're showing them as 2 stories, but that really wants to be resolved with the market research that Civitas is already doing. And talk about how these gateways and corners really create that sense of place. How do you know when you've arrived at St. Bernard? Coming under the overpass, coming from Ivorydale, coming south, coming into the business district from the south. There's a real opportunity to build some buildings here that not only add more density, but add that sense of place. They contain the street in a way that these vast parking lots that kind of work their way off of Vine Street don't necessarily do right now. And we can blend these scales. So it's not intended that we're going to build walls of tall buildings. There's an opportunity to break up these spaces with green space and break up the scale of the buildings into smaller buildings, but also even with a large building to break that scale down a little bit. And lastly, materials. So we want to make sure that we've got a material palette that works with the village of St. Bernard, works with the history, but it's also forward thinking in the detailing. So we envision a fair amount of brick because that's what you've got in your neighborhood, but there will be other materials that also engage in this. It's really hard to find craftsmen who do carved stone and things like that. We're not talking about a building that is fancy or feels out of place. We want a building that's going to feel authentic to the village of St. Bernard. So we had talked about our project goals, and then we had added to that last one in the red, making sure that we're creating a destination. So this notion of outdoor space that serves the residents, but just as importantly, outdoor space that serves the entire community. And that's what we mean by when we're talking about amenities. You all know the site really well, so we'll scroll through this pretty quickly. The adjustment in the retail space, that's still something that market research. So our goal right now is to make sure that we've got a lot of flexibility in the plan, right? Because this is still really early in the process. So in meeting number 2, these were the 4 schemes that we presented. And over the course of the conversation of the evening, it seemed like option C became a favorite, maybe not literally, but at least in the offerings that it had. And I mentioned a couple of these things already, that the strengths of this scheme are that we really create this opportunity for an impactful green space right on the main corner, the southeast corner of this site at Vine and McClellan. It maintains an entrance at Ross, so that axial relationship coming from the Tennessee-Ross corridor has an opportunity to come into the site, but not through the site. That was very important to some of the residents that we spoke to. We wanted to make sure that we're preserving the bus stop. We want this needs to be a transit oriented development to some degree. And we want to make sure that Metro has a stop here, that they can actually improve upon what they already have. And that whether you're coming here as a destination, whether you live here or not, there's still a good opportunity. So even when we're showing street parking, we're also showing that we've got the bus lane and an opportunity for a stop and build on the stop that you currently have that is pretty well used, right? And then this on-street parking, which is kind of a similar vein, right? So on-street parking, because we have this width on Vine Street, we don't necessarily need all the width because we've got a 4-lane underpass at the north end. We've got 4 lanes going in the business district. We probably don't need 5.5 lanes through this 2-block area. So by bringing some parallel parking, we can actually slow traffic down. We can better serve the businesses that are in this corridor, which you see in the pink. And I think we want to be a better neighbor, right? And then you see in the massing how we've broken that up. We've created opportunities to see into the site and through the site, and hopefully it does not feel like one single large building. The offerings that are there, we've got 2 4-story buildings. They're both anchored with some retail at the ground level. We've got apartments up above. And then you see the buildings at the north end closest to the post office are shown as 3-story apartment buildings, so a different height than the 4 stories with the commercial. And you see the townhomes that are along Andrews on the western side of the site. So we wanted to make sure that in tonight's presentation, we're also addressing some of the considerations. So our parking quantity was something we talked about quite a bit last time, and we've got some ideas for that. We talked about the view towards the skyline in the subway building, which was shown here by the green space, but we've made some improvements to that as well. And we wanted to make sure that the businesses that are here and the businesses that are already in the neighborhood all get this benefit. With that, Adam Fosnoff from our office is going to share where the project has gone.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. I'm Adam Fosnoff with GBBN. I'm going to not do my best Bob Barker here and just put that down maybe. So building on what Steve was talking about, we went back to the drawing board with some of the feedback that we got from last time and made a couple revisions to accommodate some of the things that we heard. So in this scheme here that you see, it's largely very similar to that option C that we just looked at. It preserves a big open space at the corner of Vine and McClellan for community events or a plaza space for gathering. It also maximizes the parking in this scheme now. So where last time we had closer to 200 spaces, now we're closer to 280, which is yielding 1.1 or so cars per unit. We're still achieving a massing that's somewhat similar. So instead of one big long linear box along Vine Street, breaking it down into 3 smaller buildings to help blend in with the scale of St. Bernard, and then orienting the townhomes on the west side, right on Andrew Street. So they're a little more scale appropriate to some of the single family residences that are back there. And also sort of relate to that community as well. And then what you see in sort of ghosted for future development up here in the corner would be something that this is developable property and land, but in order to achieve the parking requirements that we're looking at, if we were to build on that in the future, that would probably require some sort of structured parking or parking within that footprint in order for to support all the programmatic functions of the full site. The other thing that we heard here was maybe accentuating the pedestrian and vehicular connection that's on access to the Skyline building. So the main entrance would still be at Ross Avenue. The intersection would be preserved. But here we're talking about now creating a space that would be on access to Skyline that would promote visibility back to those existing businesses, but also sort of begin to have a feel of creating an urban neighborhood with a street corner buildings on each side that could be used for parallel parking during the day, but could also be turned into event space on evenings or weekends, and able to sort of adapt to the community's needs. Again, this is the same scheme, but a view from the backside. So you can see the townhouses fronting along Andrew Street. And then we thought, and one thing that we're exploring with the contractor and Darren and Brian is the idea of what if we want to achieve more parking here and create higher car ratios per unit. So the sort of most economically efficient strategy would be to do some sort of partially submerged garage structure beneath the buildings. So this is largely in the exploratory mode, but it would give us another 70 to 80 cars for the site and bump the car ratio up to 1.6 per unit, which is pretty good and maybe even a surplus from what the market study would end up telling us. So with that, we also wanted to think about how can we also maybe even further push this and create a little more of an urban street kind of condition and draw activity into the center of the site. So with this scheme, we've shifted that vehicular connection that was previously on access to Skyline in the previous scheme. This one is actually creating almost an urban street corner effect. So you have the Skyline subway building on a corner, you have commercial or retail space fronting both of these ends along this entryway, and then you have perhaps open green space for a dog park or some sort of gathering space in the corner. And the idea here is that we're sort of mimicking the attraction and the draw that an urban condition might have, and will help activate the site and help serve as a destination. And the other benefit to this is also by shifting that street further to the north, you're actually enlarging then the green space at the corner that could be used for the business district overspill. Again, similar numbers here. We're looking at about 200 total units, townhouses fronting Andrew Street, and 200 to, depending on the parking configuration, 200 to 300 cars for the site. And again, a view from the backside. And then similar to how Steve walked through some of the ideas of design principles and concepts, these are sort of similar. So talking about the three typologies for housing: apartment, townhouses, or walk-ups. So these aren't necessarily what this would look like, but all of these photos have some principles that we might want to start thinking about or applying to this building. So on the left, you see parking sort of tucked beneath some of the units. That could be something we're looking at. Where we have commercial or retail space at grade, we're talking about a taller floor-to-floor height and more transparency to sort of encourage that interaction between the street level and the activity inside the buildings. Balconies are something that both are an amenity for the units, but also can be used to sort of break down and give a texture to the building. The apartment building will likely be a double loaded corridor. And because of the scale and size of the apartment buildings, that gets pretty long. So one technique to sort of break that up is to add color, add lighting, add recesses at the doors so it feels more habitable and not just like a long shotgun corridor. For the townhouses, there are a number of ways here to think about townhouses. One might be to elevate the front door, elevate the stoop, so you bring it up off of street level a little bit. Another idea might be to set it back from the street, so you're creating the idea of a sort of a front yard condition. It could be 3 stories tall, it could be 4 stories tall. In the townhouse model, they would all include a garage underneath, but you could also pair it with, maybe it's a tandem garage, you could pair it with the front entry on the same facade as the garage itself, and dress it up a little bit so you don't have a back end to the townhouses. And then while certain units of the townhouses will be grouped together. Instead of just one sort of box, one big box, we might play with the articulation or the shape of the roof line to give it a little form, and so it doesn't feel like just one static kind of cube dumped onto the site. And then the walk-up units. Walk-ups would be a 3-story building without an elevator, so they'd have a common stair that would serve the building. So 3 stories. It could have limited commercial at the ground level. Oftentimes, the residents would share a front entry, and they would share that sort of same landing, the same stair, and that would become their private lobby. And then you can see what it might look like from one of those ground floor units. So material precedents. St. Bernard has a really interesting collection of architecture. There's a lot of really cool brickwork. There's a lot of cool stonework, as you can see in the P&G building across the street. It has an industrial feel. There's lots of, there's railroads, there's highways, there's sort of moments of sort of cool steel that appear. The housing stock is largely 2 to 3 story houses, and all of them have kind of front porches that are elevated, which I think lends credence to the idea of elevating some of the porches or having kind of walk-ups that are accessed from grade. And so building on some of that existing language, we think that brick will be a large component of these buildings. And brick that's done with a really well sort of defined level of craft, but detailed modern. So these 4 images represent images of brick that we think is both traditional and put together in a contemporary way. We would think about GFRC or UHPC, which is essentially a cementitious panel product. It could be used as an accent. So while most of the facade might be brick, you might have these panels that sort of become accents and break up the facade a little bit. And then we could introduce the warmth of wood, but the durability of a panel product with something like a phenolic panel to lend more accent and sort of blend in with the community a little more. And then because there is a lot of parking, and it's a lot of surface parking, and we want this space to be welcome. And so when people are looking out their windows across the site, we don't want it just to be a big black sea of asphalt. The greenery and the landscaping is going to be really important. So here are some images of looking at how you might dress up a configuration like that. So the softscape around the edges, creating moments and plazas for gathering and event space, things that could double as parking during the day or could be cleared for events on a weekend, are all things that we'd be looking at here. And then the last thing is strategic positioning. So sustainability is more and more of a hot topic, and there are a number of certification processes and standards to follow. We'll be exploring that as we move through schematic design, but the principles of creating something that's energy efficient, that promotes the health and well-being of the occupants is something that we really want to explore, and something that will position the project for people to want to live here and thrive while they do live here. So next steps.
So we can both talk. So good evening, everybody, again. The next steps, we just want to say thank you for all of the suggestions and attending all of these meetings with us. And we think that this is the end of the beginning, meaning this is the end of the community engagement sessions, but this is not the end of community input into the project. Where we are right now is we will take what we've heard and continue to refine the design. We will be in regular communication with the CIC. And as we move towards a final design, they will know and we will know. So this is not the end of it, but we're really pleased to get your input. And we're happy to keep working together. So I guess at this point, unless you want to add something, we'll be happy to take any questions or listen to some more feedback.
He said it perfectly, so we'll just wait for feedback.
I'll start with the online ones. Where will post office workers, other businesses, et cetera, park? We live right off Andrew Street currently, and everyone back here has over 2 cars per house.
So and you can jump in here too, Steve. We're still working on the parking. Obviously, we have to get an arrangement with the post office, and that is an arrangement that the CIC has at this point. Clearly, before we can close and get anything finalized, we have to have that worked out. We are studying right now the parking with GBBN and our construction partners to figure out how we get the most parking. But the goal is to have this site be at least self-parking. And the more parking we can get is what we plan to do. So we're still working on that. And that's why this diligence has taken longer than we originally said in September. So that's why we're still working on it. But right? Anything?
Oh, that's right.
Is permeable paving considered for parking especially?
So go ahead, Steve. So permeable meaning it filters water through as opposed to impervious surface. We haven't considered that yet. Steve, I don't know if you have examples of that in this market or where we could use that, but
We have used pervious paving quite a bit. It's a nice feature to be able to offer because when Metropolitan Sewer District, who is very conscious about runoff, when they're looking at detention, because we will be responsible for, while there's probably not a lot of site detention on the property now, we will be held to a higher standard as in, 2022 standards with MSD. And we'll make sure that we've got underground detention on property, which is far more than just the drains that lead into your sewer system right now. The pervious paving slows that water down, and we would be able to work with MSD to reduce the catch basins that we would put underground. But the paving is a great way to kind of work runoff. It helps manage a little bit of the oils on the paving. We can look at bioswales and things like that, because we will have, as Adam described, a fair amount of green space in the parking lot so that we can do some good collection. And then the pervious paving would be part of that strategy if we pursued that.
Is there a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan for this development?
We haven't gotten that far yet, but as all the work we do, we believe in diversity, equity, inclusion. Obviously, it's me, right? So we want to do the right practices for development. It's the same that we did when I was at the port and the land bank. It's the right thing to do. We'll have the right partners, but we're just at the very beginning, but we support all of that stuff.
Will construction use union labor?
Obviously, we haven't selected our construction partner yet. So I guess that's the most honest answer I can give you right now is we don't know. We're not against union. We're not pro-union. We just don't know who's going to build it yet because we don't even know what we're going to build yet. We're still figuring that out.
When will we hear more about financing? I believe that TIF financing was listed as part of the deal in the first engagement session. Will the community have a chance to see the nuts and bolts before council approves the deal?
I'm looking at John for the answer to that question. I don't know what's publicly shared on TIF and what.
Yes, and some of that, what you had also worked out with, I guess initially is also working through the port. But yes, there will be, and that will be addressed, and we will be working through that process with the development company.
What environmental standards will construction be held to?
We're not, again, we haven't selected the construction partner yet, but as you can see from the slide, it's pretty important for us to really do the most forward-looking sustainable construction that we can. Obviously, we would probably build it to a base lead standard anyway. There's not talk about getting certification yet, but that's business practices in most places. So it will be the most sustainable that makes sense for the project. It's the right thing to do, but it also makes it the most desirable place for people to want to live and locate their businesses. So
That's all the Zoom questions so far.
Anybody in the group?
Good.
So
Anybody in the audience have any questions?
Any other questions? Wow, we're good.
I have a comment. I think these are lovely, these have been great engagement processes. I love that we've had a wonderful turnout for these events. And I really see from each one of the meetings, you can clearly see that there's been an adaptation based off of that interaction that you've had with the community. And I really want to commend you for it because, yeah, this is a very unusual, not every community receives this kind of treatment with a prospective developer. And I think that you have been incredibly gracious to this community, and I appreciate all the hard work that you've done for this. This is really beautiful what you've presented for us so far.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for those on Zoom, that was a generally positive comment.
So whether or not anyone actually here in the audience has any other questions, but on behalf of the CIC, we will make the commitment in keeping the community informed as we progress through this process. Again, our development team that we've partnered with will be able to help guide us through this vision. We want to be able to make sure that we can share this with the community as well, keep you all updated. As design schemes become available with more defined architecture, we'll be able to, keep you updated as well. So, we look at the community obviously as a partner in this as well. There isn't anything that's going to be top secret about this. So we'll make sure that, again, the community is kept abreast of this. Any opportunities as things become available, we'll keep you informed. As we get through the process, once, we're able to work through, construction and all of that and closing, everyone's going to be kept informed. So again, we appreciate everyone that's participated in this. I know that we've had some of the same faces that have come each time, and we really appreciate that. And again, we look forward to working with you all as we continue forward. So if there isn't anything else tonight, again, thank you for coming, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.